That wasn't the way he interpreted love. You're being fed. There's a roof over your head. There's clothes on your back. I haven't thrown you out of the house. That is their interpretation of what love is. Hello, it's Layefa. How are you? I'm doing another topic. I want to talk about emotional neglect on our kids, or maybe some of the emotional neglect that we feel have experienced, and now that we're parents or parents to be, what we can do better or whatever. Now, this topic is definitely inspired by another YouTuber, Obodo Oyinbo TV. Check her out if you don't know who she is. She makes great topic videos talking about Nigerian people in the diaspora, some of our real life experiences. And I wanted to touch on this particular topic because I think that everybody has their own 2 pence to add. I understand that some of us are now grown-ups and we may have experienced some form of emotional neglect when it comes to some of the parenting that we faced as children. Like, we wish maybe our dads did something differently, or our mums did things better to spend more time with us, and so forth. Sometimes we can feel a lot of resentment towards them. Now, this is not my life experience because I feel very fortunate. Even though my mum worked extremely hard, I feel like for the majority of my childhood she was very, very present, and I think that helped our relationships. Now that I'm a grown-up, I hear grown-ups now, like my mum's age, who do not necessarily feel the same about their parents, and they're very resentful towards their parents. Maybe they feel that their parents didn't show them enough love, or they didn't show them love the way they would have liked it. Now, we need to understand, especially when we're like second, third, fourth generation immigrants or migrants, whatever the term is our parents and our grandparents' life experience are very different from ours. Keep in mind that they were coming from maybe Africa or the Caribbean for a better life. Maybe they were just coming here to get educated and go back, and maybe they were just coming here to work for a bit and they were planning to go back. I know a lot of parents, a lot of grown-ups who are now grandparents, and they say their intention was never to stay in this country, but 10, 20 years down the line they found that they've stayed, and their intention was to always go back home and settle. It's turned out not to be the case. Keep in mind, their life experiences back home, parenting was very different. Like, love was shown differently. Especially, I feel like my grandfather's generation, love was shown as you've got a roof over your head, you've got food on the table, you've got clothes on your back. What else do you want? I am showing you love. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't be doing these 3 things. The whole idea of giving affection, hugging, kissing, telling a child that you like, why would I do that? That seems absurd and bizarre, and maybe that you're spoiling the child. And I feel like some grown-ups are resentful that they didn't feel that because they've grown up seeing maybe their school friends have experienced that. And if you want to compare your African parents with your white British parents, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. They've had very, very different life experiences. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned, and now as a parent myself, is that our parents are doing the best they can, or at least they did the best they can the way they knew how. And I think that's a really, really important part to factor, is that they were doing the best they can the way they knew how. If that's all they knew, then that's all they could express. That is the biggest love that they can express to you. So if you're resentful because your dad never told you that he loved you, or he never hugged you and kissed you, that wasn't the way he interpreted love. You're being fed. There's a roof over your head. There's clothes on your back. I haven't thrown you out of the house. That is their interpretation of what love is. And for us to then expect more, we're not really putting ourselves in their shoes. And we have to appreciate what they've done for us. And especially just generally paving the way and making life somewhat more comfortable for us to live in this country. Because there are a lot of barriers and things that had to break through in the workplace, on the streets. And especially if you were living in this country back in the 50s, the 60s, maybe you were the only black child in your school, and there was a lot of racial tension in those days, and you'd have teddy boys constantly beating you up, and you'd be targeted as the naughty child, when you're not naughty, you're just fighting for your life, you're trying to survive. Therefore, you show love to your kids somewhat differently. Anyway, I might have gone off on a little bit of a tangent. I feel like now as a parent parent myself. If there are certain things that you've experienced that you didn't like, now is your chance to do better. Or even if there are things that you did experience, like I'll give an example. When I was growing up, my mum would spank me. And I don't know any African child who didn't get a spanking, who didn't get a whooping growing up. Now, I think what my mum did, which was very unique for her generation, I feel, and she doesn't even remember this, is every time she spanked me or gave me a whooping, like afterwards, when things had calmed down, she would come call me, sit me down and explain to me why I got that whooping. Now, I feel like that was so innovative of her time, of her generation. I speak to my friends, my cousins, whoever, and I'm like, did your parents do that with you? Like sit you down after they just tan your backside and say to you, this is why I've spanked you and this is why I don't like, and she'll literally tell me, I don't want to be spanking you, but you did something wrong and I need you to understand that you should, like literally this is what my mum would say to me. This stuck in my brain. Like I was like, wow. And I don't know a lot of parents who did that at that time. Obviously, I feel like maybe there was something that happened in her upbringing that made her feel that she would do something differently with me. But when I compare my own way I was disciplined compared to some of my friends, she could have been worse, if that makes sense. She tried her best the way she could. I don't think my mum would necessarily have wanted to take me to a childminder, but she had to work. And childminders back in the day were very different to the way childminders are now in the UK. There's a lot more regulation, there's a lot more monitoring. Whereas back in my day, when you're leaving your child with a childminder, you're literally just praying for the best, literally, because childminders were quite brutal back in the days because there was no monitoring. Anybody could do it and pick up a check from the government and say, yeah, they cared for so-and-so's child. My thing is, when you have experienced some form of emotional neglect and now that you're grown-ups, I think it's important to sit down with your parents and at least you have said it and maybe you can come to a point of agreeing, maybe. And now as a parent, I feel very privileged to be in a fortunate position whereby I can care for them most of the time. Yes, I might make mistakes. I'm definitely not perfect. I'm constantly learning how to do things better, and especially now that they're at this age of talking and communicating, I can learn from them. It's constantly about learning because, like, you're very aware that yes, I make YouTube videos, I'm also caring for my kids full time, and I have projects that I do on the side. I too have to be very careful of not emotionally neglecting my children, because it's very true that you could be present but not present, you know. So you might be present, like you're physically there, but because your mind is constantly thinking about this next venture or this next project, or especially if you have a very entrepreneurial mindset, you're constantly thinking of this, that and whatever, you might not necessarily be present with that child. So one of the things that I learned from a parenting class is that we should set aside special time with each child individually as well as collectively. And like, even if bath time is your quality time, like there's nothing wrong with, if your child is young enough, like getting in the bath with your baby, and that's quality time. Reading, nighttime reading, that's beautiful, because you find that those are usually the times when your child remembers what happens at school and they have this whole spiel about what this person did and who they played with and what they ate for lunch and things like that. Those are times when you can reconnect with your children. Yes, it does get difficult the more children you have, because you have to balance that. Typically they advise to set aside 15 minutes a day per child of just quality time, and I think it gets easier when they're older, because then you find what their interests are. Like one of my children, Isaac, he loves coming into the kitchen with me and helping me cook. So if I'm cooking and he's like, "Mummy, can I help?" that's our quality time. I might let him in for 10 minutes and we'll, you know, we might talk, we might make some jokes, or, you know, even times when I'm moisturizing them, because sometimes I feel like they're not moisturizing their elbows good enough. I don't want any ashy children. That's our quality time. And it's all about just fitting it in with your life, so that you at least you've tried your best not to neglect them in some certain aspects. And even little things like attending their school events, if they've got a special assembly or a special something. And I know it's hard when you're working, especially if you're working full time and you don't work locally. To get time off work can be a whole different scenario. I know. Yeah, but if you're staying at home, you can make that a priority because you have the time to do it. And I remember even me as a child, when my mum was able to attend certain events that I had at school, the amount of pride and the self-esteem, the confidence that you have, and you want to make that performance even better because you know that somebody in the audience is somebody that you love who's watching. I'd love to know. I know some of you are very experienced parents, very experienced grandparents. Comment below, share with me some of the things that you learned from your parents, and then some of the things that you learned becoming a parent. Comment below. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, your views. Let's create a dialogue. Sharing is caring. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you liked it. If you've made it to the end and you haven't subscribed, you're rude. Like, you're actually rude. You're rude. You've made it to the end of the video and you haven't subscribed. Hit the subscribe button. Until my next video, think smart, work hard to make it happen. Bye.